Hello everybody. Today what we're going to be doing is looking at creating our ball rig, and then we are going to set that up for animation. So again, if you are not familiar with rigging, or you don't want to go through the rigging process, or you're having problems with the rig, you can always use the rig that I'm supplying here in the reference here. So you can just go into your content, down to rigs, and then ball rigging, and so actually this will be the text. So this is what I'm going to be reading from. So if you wanted to follow along, you can do that. And then the ball rig should be back in there, somewhere in there. Ball rig is not there. I will make sure that by the time that this video is up, the ball rig will be up on there. Okay, so let's get started. First thing that you're going to want to do is open up Maya. So you don't need anything too special in here. Whatever version of Maya, this should work all the way back to, I don't know, 2005 or so. And if I lose you or confuse you in any way, just go ahead and just stop it and play back and slow down the play rate. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a polygon sphere. So I'm going to go to holding my spacebar down, and I'm going to polygon primitive sphere. Okay, and then I'm going to select that. I'm going to rotate that in Z. So I'm going to go to rotate Z, take that to 90. So I'm typing in 90 and hitting enter. And you can see that now is going that way. I'm going to rename this thing. So instead of sphere 1, I'm going to rename it. Ball. So I rename it ball. I'm also going to then create a NURB circle. So when you are working with a rig, generally you don't want to take the animation or the geometry and animate on that geometry. You want to have like a control system that is then going to tell the geometry what to do. So I'm going to go to create, NURBS primitive, and then circle. And in that NURBS circle, I'm going to take the scale X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to set that to 2. So I just typed in there 2, and then I'm also going to rotate on Z, rotate Z. I'm going to change that to 90. Okay, and then once I change that to 90, I'm going to select both of these. So I'm just clicking and dragging a box around both of those. I'm going to do a modify freeze transformations. So if you have the polygon modeling tab up, freeze transformations is right there. It looks like a little snowflake. So what that does is it will set all of this stuff. So you can see the rotate Z. It's going to set this as the new default. So it's going to set this rotation as the 0. And yeah, so then we're going to select the circle. I'm going to do a Control D to duplicate this. So we're going to have 2 circles in there. Control D to duplicate it. So I have two circles. I'm going to scale this one. So I'm going to select X, Y, and Z scale. I'm going to set that to 2. And you can see now we have 2 circles in there. And I'm going to freeze the transformations on that one. Okay, so we're going to go to the inner circle. We're going to create a little diamond shape. So to do that, I'm going to right mouse click and hold on the circle. I'm going to go to control vertices. And the control vertices are these little dots in here. And if I hit W, I can then move this thing around and edit it. But what I want to do is I want to select one at 10 o'clock, shift select the one at 2 o'clock, shift select the one at 4, shift select the one at 8 o'clock, and I'm going to do a scale, and I'm going to grab it from the middle, and I'm just going to pull all of those in so that they make kind of like a little diamond shape. You can change it to whatever kind of shape you want. It doesn't matter. It's just for visual differences in there. So change that, and I want to right mouse click and then go into object mode. And object mode is, again, just that you're selecting the objects, not the finer components of that object. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to just select on the name. If you don't have the name here, you might have attributes. Just make sure you're in the channel layer, and then double click on that. And then we're just going to rename this rotate. Rotate. Control. Rotate control. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing for the outer one. I'm going to select that outer one. I am going to right mouse click and hold, go to control vertices, and again I'm going to select the same ones that I selected before on the smaller circle. Only this time I'm going to grab it from the Z. I'm going to grab that blue line there, and I'm going to click and drag, and it's going to give me this little pointy shape. Right mouse click, go into object mode, and that will get us out of there. I'm going to select my control again, and I'm going to rename this from NURBS Circle 2. I'm going to call that Master Move. Master Move. Okay, then we're going to select everything. So I'm just clicking and dragging a box around all the things. And I'm going to go up to, I'm going to hold my spacebar, and I'm going to go to Edit, and then Delete by Type. And I'm going to kill the history on this, meaning that I have these input nodes over here. Those are all going to be gone, and all the changes that I've made are going to be baked into the geometry. So delete by type, history, and I'm also going to, while I have my spacebar held down, I'm going to do an edit, or a modify, modify freeze transformations. There we go. And that just to make sure that we got it all set. Now what that will do is that if I move this thing and I rotate it by accident or do some changes to it, if I want to get back to the setup that I want, all I have to do is just select all these, turn them to 0, and then they'll go back. You never want to select the, well, not never, but you don't want to select your scale and set those to 0. If things disappear on you, like if you're working with a rig and all of a sudden things disappeared on you, it may be that you scaled it to 0, so you can find it in the outliner, select it, and then set that to 1. If it's in the outliner, it's still in the scene. If it's not in the outliner, you actually found a way to delete it. So just be aware of that. All right. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to constrain the ball to the rotate control. So right now, our ball, and I want to see the geometry in here. When I select it, I can see the geometry, but I want to see it all the time, and that is going to be this little button right up here. So let's see if this actually does what I'm hoping it does. Don't know if it does, but that's what we're looking for, is this little button. If I hover over it, it says wireframe on shaded. So if I turn that on, now I can see that. Okay, so I am going to select the rotate control and then shift select the ball. So it's going to be the parent, and you might have to hit W for this to be able to select it. You can't really select things if you have rotate on, because it'll just think you're selecting the rotate control. So it has to be, I usually just hit W. When in doubt, press W. So I select the control, shift select the ball, and then I'm going to hold my spacebar down and do a constrain, and then down to orient. And I'm just going to click on the option box for orient, and I'm just going to click on maintain offset. It should be fine because we froze all the transformations, but just, I don't know, just be sure. It shouldn't matter either way, but we're just going to click on maintain offset and we'll hit add. Okay, now what this does for us is if we deselect everything and then select my control, if I rotate this, you'll now see that by selecting the control and doing rotate, I'm now affecting the rotate of that ball. Okay, again, I want to get back to my 0, reset everything. I can select on the rotate, press 0, and now it's back to my original spot. Okay, and then, so that's going to be the rotate. I want to be able to move my master move to be able to control rotate control. Let's just select master move. Okay, so I want to select the rotate control, and then I'm going to shift select my master move, because right now if I look in here, these things are not parented, they aren't in any hierarchy. So what I want to do is I want to be able to, when I move my master control, the rotate control will go with it. So my master move is going to be the parent, the rotate control is going to be the child, and so by selecting, I'm physically parenting these now, and this is not a constraint. I'm physically parenting, so it's the child to the parent, so child first, then the parent, and I'm going to press P, and that's going to parent the child, or parent the rotate control to the master move. So now if I move my master move, you can see the child will go with it. The ball is not affected because we only set a rotation constraint on it, not a point constraint. Okay, so now to attach the sphere, we're going to select the master move. We're going to shift select the sphere, and we're going to do a constrain and a point. I'm going to go into the option box, we'll do a maintain offset, and then we'll hit add. Okay, so now if I grab my master move, I should be able to move the ball and the control. All right, so then we're going to need some squash and stretch to our ball. And what we're going to do is we're going to add something called a nonlinear deformer. And what that basically means is it'll be like a gizmo, and that gizmo will do the squashing and the stretching at the same time. So I'm going to select my sphere because I want to add it to it. I'm going to hold my spacebar down, go to deform, down to nonlinear, and then I'm going to go to squash. Okay, and you can see somewhere in here, it created this input squash handle. So if I do a factor, then you can see I'm selecting the word factor, middle mouse clicking and dragging in my timeline or in my viewport, and that is going to allow me to really kind of go nuts with it, but that's not how far we want to go. We just wanted enough to be able to make it look like our thing is squashing and stretching. And set that back to 0. Okay, and then this is the control handle that I was talking about. So if I press 4 and select this, there we go. You can see that green, and then there's a little line in it. It has some features that you can add or change in here if you want to. We aren't going to be playing around with those, but if I put the factor to, let's see, wait for those to kind of go away. If I have my factor set to 1.7, what I can do is I could change my low bound. Right now that's set to -1, but I can increase that, and now it will not affect the bottom. Right? I can stretch it out and have it really affect all the way down, but again, that doesn't really help. So I'll just undo that, and then it works the same way for the high bound. If I go down or lower, you'll see that it will change the shape of that. Now the other thing to be aware is that if you move your if you grab the handle and move it around, you'll see that we'll be able to kind of pass through that geometry. So if you're making something where some liquid is pouring out of a bottle, you can possibly use this to help you get that motion. Okay. So I'm just going to undo that, undo that, undo that, and undo that. All right, so now that we have the squash, what we need to do is be able to control that squash control. So I'm going to select the master move, and in the channel box, what we want to do is we don't want to have to search around to grab this thing and then search into squash and then find factor. What I want to do is I want to create an attribute on the master move, and that attribute will propagate in the bottom here. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm selecting my master move. I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to add attribute. And that attribute that I'm adding is going to be named squash. And there's a bunch of different data types that we're going to be doing. Float will allow you to do decimal place moving. Integer will be whole numbers. Vector is going to be like a 3 value number. So the minimum that we're going to do on this, so we can set bounds for how big or how much it's going to do. It's going to do -10 for the minimum and 10 for the maximum. And then default is going to be 0. And then once we get that set, I'm going to hit OK. All right, once I hit OK, then what I want to do is I want to be able to drive this value, or I want to set this value and have it drive, where is it here? Have it drive the squash factor value. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have my my squash handle. I'm going to select that squash handle. I'm going to go down and select squash handle 1, and where it says factor, I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to do a set driven key. So when I go into set driven key, what that will do is it gives me 2 areas. One is going to be the driver. That's basically the thing that is doing the value change. And then there's the driven, the thing that's being controlled by the driver. If you think of a remote controlled TV, you have a remote and you have the TV. The remote is your driver. The driven is the TV. So when you press the button on, press the power button on your TV, then your TV is going to react to that button. Now, a programmer went through and put all those points in there, those buttons, but a programmer could very easily say, okay, when I hit the power button, I want you TV to, go up a channel or go down a channel. So it's all depending on what the programmer of that TV wants to do. You're going to be doing that same thing. You're going to be the programmer of this. So we're going to say, okay, I want to find a driver. So the driver that I want to do is going to be on this master move. It's going to be this squash. But I have to load this component first. I have to load the object master move into the driver. So I'm going to select it first. I'm going to do load driver. When I do load driver, you can see that the master move shows up, and then down here at the bottom, squash is available. Okay. So the way that this works is that you have to have like 4 kind of blue segments on. You need a driver, the value that's getting sent, which is squash. Then I want the driven, which is the squash control, and that's going to be into the factor value. So what this is basically saying is this squash value is going to control this factor value. This is all done with animation curves. So before you start doing any of the set driven keys, I mean, you can set this up, but before you actually start setting an animation key on this set driven, I want you to go into the properties, and in the properties, under animation, we're going to want to set these to linear and linear. And the reason for that is because it's going to be using an animation curve to decide what value is what. So the input is going to be like our the input along the x is going to be the value of squash, and then it's going to go up and look at the curve, and it's going to say, okay, well, when it's a value of a value of 5, then my squash factor should be, and it'll go over and look at the value on there and say, okay, my squash value should be a value of 6. Okay, it doesn't have to be like exactly 1-to-1, but our curve, if we get a linear curve rather than a splined curve, we'll be able to control the animation. We'll be able to directly drive what the animation looks like in the squash, and I'll show you that just a little bit later. But this is one thing that I want to have you do is set this for linear and linear, hit save, and then when you do that, now you can come over here to set driven key and set a key on that. So now we've just basically set, okay, when master move squash is set to 0, then set the factor to 0, and you can see there's a little blue indicator saying that there's animation keys on these, or set driven keys. So now what I want to do is I want to select my control again, and I say, okay, well, if that happens at 0, what happens when this goes to 10? So I set that to 10, nothing happens, that's fine. I'm expecting that not to change. But then what I want to do is I want to change my squash. So I'm going to say when squash is at 10, then it's going to go down. So I'm selecting the word factor, and I'm middle mouse clicking in my screen. And while I do that, you can see how flat it goes. We definitely don't need to see it that flat. Generally, you want these things to be more felt rather than seen. If you see them, then it'll just throw your animation off. So what I'm saying here is that you'll want to give it, something that is not going to be too insane, but you want to also give your animator, which is you, some control over that thing. So we will set that, and I am going to set this just as like a factor of -2. Okay, we'll give it some extra stuff. We don't have to use all that, but we'll just put it in there as extra. Now, before you do anything else, we want to make sure that all 4 areas are highlighted in blue. And then we're going to say, okay, key this at -2. Now, if I select the master move or select it in here, either way, it does the same thing. Select master move. And I'm going to go to squash. And I say, okay, well, if squash is at 10, if I select the word squash and middle mouse click and drag, you can see that my thing is now, the closer I get to 0, the rounder it gets. But as I get to -10, you can see that it's not stretching, right? So with squash at -10, we need to get the squash handle, get the factor, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it as a value of 2. And that's going to be our stretch. Now with all 4 of these still selected, I'm going to hit key. And now if I select my my control, you can see I have squash. If I select the word squash, middle mouse click and drag, you can see now my ball is being driven by our set driven key. And once that's done, if you have that, then you can just get rid of the set driven key. That's done. We can set this to 0. And then what we want to do is we want to constrain our handle to the master move. And what I mean by that is that if I turn squash on, right, like that, if I move my master move now, so I select the master move and I move it out, you can see what's happening to my ball. It's kind of like melting in place. Although that is a pretty cool effect, not the effect that I was going for. So, and the reason for that, again, is because if I move this thing out of the way, you can see that my control is not moving with my master move. So then what I'm going to do is I'll just set my squash to 0. I'm going to select the master move control. I'm going to shift select the squash handle, and you can kind of get in there and hold shift and select that, or you can do control select. So if I have the master move selected, I want to click it in here. I don't know why, but you have to control select the control. If you hold shift, it will select all the things. We don't want to select all the things. Okay, so I have my master move control, my master move selected. I shift select, if I'm selecting in the viewport, my squash handle. I'm going to hold my space bar down and do a constrain and parent. I'm also going to do the option box just to see what that's looking like. Maintain offset is on, that's fine, that'll work, and I'm going to hit add. Okay, now with that, now what should happen is that if I select my squash, make that squashy, and I move this around, now that this has been parented, now the control in there has been parented, it's going to move along with my object, right? I can even rotate it, and it will move along with that object. Okay. So we'll set this to 0, set this to 0. Let's see, and that is pretty much the rig. The other thing that I wanted to do now is basically lock the thing down so that you can't accidentally make a mistake and select it by accident or do anything nefarious to it. It will lock itself down when you reference it in, but we want to do some more specific locking down. Like for instance, this is only going to be translated in this direction. So what I don't need is I don't need access to translate it this way and that way. I also don't need this thing to rotate in that direction, because again, it's all going to be from the side view. So I'm going to start locking this down. I have the master move selected. Okay, then I'm going to select the words rotate Z, and I'm going to also hold control down and do rotate Y, or you can click and drag, doesn't matter. I'm also going to hold control. So right there on rotate Y and Z, I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to hold, and I'm going to hide and hide selected. Let's see, lock and hide selected. So lock and hide selected. Now, if you make a mistake, you can see that now it's disappeared, but it's also locked. So if I tried to rotate that, you can see that that's not allowing me to do that. So to be able to get back to that, if I needed to get back to it, I can go into Edit, and I can go into my channel control. And in the channel control, it says keyable. So you can see that the rotate is not keyable. All I have to do is just go into this, down to rotate, and I would select my, not rotate axis, but where are you? Yeah, there it is. Rotate Y and Z, and I can move those back, and then those would be back over in here under keyable. You can see that they're grayed out, meaning that I can't set keys on them. So I could select them and then do right mouse click and then do unlock selected, and that would unlock them. The other thing that I could do is there's another tab in here, locked, and I could just take both of those and then move those out, and then you're back to where you were. So, but right now we're going to go down and lock and hide selected. I'm going to select the words translate X, right mouse click, lock and hide selected. I am going to select the words scale X, Y, and Z. I don't need any of those. I'm going to right mouse click, lock and hide selected. And I'm going to select the sphere. And I'm going to put this, I'm going to, let's see, select the words rotate Z and Y. Actually, that you don't really need to do that. I don't know why I have that listed in there, but what we want to do is in the display layer, if I have this thing selected, I want to create a display layer. So down in here, I want to hit this little blue with the dot on it. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to add my object to it. And I have a V there. We'll turn it the visualization on or off. I can double click on this and rename it. I'm going to call it ball, L-Y-R. And the reason why I put L-Y-R on there is because we already have something called ball. And so Maya can't recognize the difference between ball layer or geometry ball. So anything that's named the same is going to have a clash. And so this just also helps when I'm looking in like the nodes here. It'll say ball layer, and I know that that is just a display layer. So it's something that also helps me to be able to know what that is. We're going to change the display type from normal to reference. And reference, what that means is that the, if I save that, that means that if I try to select it now, it's going to be not selectable. So I can't accidentally select it. If you need to select it again, you can change this from R to nothing, and then you can select it again. But then once you're done, then just go back over here and click on this. T template is just the grayed out. If you click it one more time, then it's referenced. Okay. Okay, then I'm going to select my rotate control, and I'm going to select the words translate X, Y, and Z because we don't want this thing to, we don't want this to move around like that. What we want it to do is not move around, so we're going to lock and hide selected. We're also going to select the rotate Y and Z. Lock and hide selected. And let's see, rotate Z, rotate Y. Scale X, Y, and Z. Lock and hide selected. So now you can see we only have rotate, and so now all I can do is I can only rotate it in this direction. Okay. Then I'm going to select my squash handle. So there's my squash handle. And I am going to take the visibility and just select the visibility and hit 0 to turn that off. I'm going to select the attributes above visibility, and I'm going to lock and hide selected. And now I can recolor the controls because right now everything kind of looks the same, so we'll just give it a little bit of differentness to it. So I'm going to select my master move. I'll select the master move, and then I'm going to go into the attribute editor, and then I'm going to go down to display, object display, drawing overrides, enable overrides, and then in here, do you have an index or RGB? So with the RGB, you can pick a color that you want. and I'm going to change it to yellow. There you go. And then I can take the same thing for the rotate control, enable overrides, RGB, select the color, and then we can change that to red. And now we have red and yellow there. Okay, so then once we have that, our ball is pretty much ready to be animated with. But what we want to do is we want to create some hierarchy here. So we have a squash handle, we have our handle, we have our controls here, and we have the geometry with some constraints on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of organize this outliner so it all falls under one ball rig. So I'm going to select the master move. I'm going to do a Control G. And do Control G. I'm going to rename that group. I'm going to call it Controls GRP. Okay, so Controls group. Enter. Now we're in the Controls group. So Control G just creates an empty group that's just holding stuff. It's just a container. All right, so I'm going to select my ball, and I'm going to group that to itself. So I'm going to select the ball, do another Control G. That's creating a group. You can see the ball in that group. I'm going to rename this group. I'm going to call this Geometry GRP. Again, same thing with the layers, LYR. I'm doing GRP, so I know that this is just a group. It's not joints or bones or anything like that. So that's my geometry group. Then I'm going to select both the control group, and I'm going to hold Control and select the geometry group, and I'm going to Control G. I'm going to group that together, and I'm going to rename this. Double click on that. Rename it Ball Rig. Okay, so now I have ball rig, and I am going to, now I just need to get this handle under my ball rig. So I'm going to select the handle, Control G to group that to itself. I am going to call this Do Not Touch, GRP. I'm going to call it that just because I don't need to touch it. And then I'm going to middle mouse click on that and drag it up to my ball group. Now, if I click on the plus, you can see that I have a controls group, geometry group, and a do not touch group. That's in the do not touch. I usually put like I put in there like I don't know, control clusters or like hair follicles or IK handles, or just kind of like a random. It's like a random holder, so put things in there. Okay, and then that's it. This is ready to go. So to save this as a rig file, we want to create a project for this. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to do a project window. So I'm going to my project window. I'm going to go to my current project. Is going to be new. We're going to call this Ball Bounce. So it's going to create a folder called Ball Bounce. The location, you can just save it to your desktop or wherever you want to save it. I'll save it to my desktop because that'll just be easier. And then do select. So it's going to save it in the directory in my desktop. It's going to create a folder Ball Bounce, and then it's going to create all of these folders underneath it. I'm going to hit accept. Now I can save my file. Do File, Save Scene As, and again, I want, like you can see that it made a desktop. It's going to put me in the Ball Bounce, and then it's going to put me in scenes. So I'm going to rename this thing. I'm going to call it Ball Rig _01 because this is the first one that I'm doing, and then I'm going to Ball Rig 01, and I'm just going to put MJR, so people know that it is me. And I'll do Save As. Okay, so this is my rig file. I could start animating on this file. I shouldn't animate on this file, but this is what, this is going to be my rig file. So what I need now is I need an animation file. So I'm going to do a new. It's going to ask me if I want to save it. I've already saved it, so I don't need to save it. And now what I want to do is I want to reference in, I want to call in a copy of that ball rig. And I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Reference Editor. In that reference editor here, I'm going to click on that new reference. It's going to ask me what I want to pull in. I want to pull in my rig. I'll do a reference, and now I should have a rig. Okay, so there is my rig file. I can close this. I don't need that open anymore. Now the other thing that I'll do is I'll set this up for animation. To set it up for animation, I'm going to go to General. And I'm going to change this to animation. Okay, so now I'm working in the animation settings. I have my graph editor. I have the timeline here. Then what do I want to do? I want to have two scenes in here. I want that working side, and I want the animation or the camera side of things. So I'm just going to click on this button. It's going to give me two different views. So right now I'm looking at the front. I'm just going to click on that little arrow, and that'll turn me over to the right side. So I'm looking there. And then on this one, I'm going to go to, I'm going to do a panels. I'm going to create the camera here. So I'm going to go panels, and then orthographic, new, front. Wrong one. Let me undo that. Undo. Panels, orthographic, new, and then we'll do a new right, I believe. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so orthographic, new, right. And we have the right side over here, so we should be all good. When I move these, they should move together. Okay, you could do right or left. I honestly don't care which one you do. When I'm setting up my camera, I'm going to click on this little button here, this resolution gate. When I click on that, that should give me a little outline around here to see where my ball is going to be. I'm going to use these dark lines as my bounce. I mean, this top one is not necessarily what I care about, but it's this bottom one that I'm more concerned with. That's one we want to have that visible so that we can use that as a bounce line. Once I get my camera set, I don't want to have these little tiny ball here like that. Okay, so get your ball bounce somewhere in there. I'm gonna lock my camera down. Lock my camera is clicking there. Lock my camera. And then I'm going to move this up, move that up. And then the other thing that I want to do here is go into my preferences. In the animation preferences, I'm going to change this to plateau and stepped. Plateau and stepped. And then I'm going to do a save. Okay. And what that's going to do is it's going to put me in stepped mode. So anytime I make a key, it's going to put me in step mode. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that my auto key is on. I like working with auto key. That's the way that I like to work. So I'm just going to open up my my animation. Go to fall, animation 1, classes 3, and so looking, no, not that one. That one. I want that one. There we go. All right, so looking at this, I'm doing 1, 9, 18, 27, 35. Okay, so in here, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, I'm going to turn I want to turn this. I want to make sure that I'm rotating in the same kind of direction. So first I'm going to do counterclockwise 90 degrees. Okay. So I'm going to set a key on everything by hitting S. That keys everything. Now I'm going to go to frame 9. And at frame 9, the ball comes down. And I'm going to rotate clockwise because it's going to go, it's going to dive this way. So I'm rotating clockwise, very important, till I'm about 90 degrees that way. And I'm here, and I'll give this just a little bit of some squash in there. Move this down. Okay. I'm going to set a key on everything. I'm going to hit S. Then I'm going to go to frame 18. Frame 18 is going to be somewhere up over in here. And I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees because we're going to just keep continuing the rotation clockwise. Don't go counterclockwise. We're going to set that to 0. I'm going to key everything. Then I'm going to go to, what I have, 18, 27. I'm going to rotate. We got 90 degrees. I'm going to lower this down. And then I'm going to give this a little bit of squash. Okay, set a key on everything. Then I'll go to 35. And again, we're going to move it up. Rotate it clockwise, not counterclockwise. Clockwise, set this to 0. Set a key on everything. And then, was it 35, then 43. 43, we'll rotate clockwise. We'll move this down. Give it a little squash. And set a key on everything. So now it should be okay. So now it should be bouncing. And so you just keep plugging along and keep doing that. If you want to see where the trail is going, we're going to select this, and then we're going to do a visualize. We'll do an editable motion trail, and then the editable motion trail in here is where we can go and just kind of make a selection around those, and then we can kind of make that so it kind of gets in the middle. Same thing here, so it doesn't hit like a middle frame in there. There we go. So I'm also looking for this to just kind of come down to an ease. So it's going to be more of like a little bit of an exponential downward movement. So like your line should be kind of going like that. Now you see that I'm probably going to be going off, and I said that if your thing starts to go off screen, right, you start losing or having too many bounces, you can remove some of these bounces, and the way that you would remove them is a couple ways. So what you would want to do is you can move this animation over. So you basically select all your controls, which is basically 2, and then you can take these and then hold shift, middle mouse click, and I'll hit W first, control, middle mouse click, and I don't think it likes that with my thing on it. What are you doing here? Oh, yeah, so I have the, no I don't, okay. I should take that. I think it might be because I have this thing going. So let me just shut this off a second. So I want to select these. Weird. I think that auto load graph editor might be screwing with me. Oh. This is a new feature. My 2024 messing with me. All right, I'll have to figure out what that is. In the meantime, what I can do is I can use my retime tool. If I double click, if I have these selected, and then say I want to have like this 18 be my starting point, I can double click here. And if I just have one of these, it will move all of the things together, right? If I have two of them, then I can squash and stretch the stuff, but I don't want two of them. I just want one because I want to move it all together, and I'm going to move this down to 1. Okay, and then once you edit that, or once you change it, then you need to hit W, go to edit, go to select unsnapped, because all of these are probably unsnapped, and then do edit snap, and then do edit select unsnapped, and yeah, not entirely sure why this is deselecting stuff. It's quite infuriating, to be honest. But that will be a fight for another day. I'm just gonna kill this. Kill this thing. There we go. Blue pencil. Clear frames. I was going to say maybe it was the blue pencil that was causing issues. Okay, yeah, so once you start playing from frame 1 to 10, now it's, it's shifted all of that stuff over, and then you can add in more of your things. But we're looking for an exponential render here. Okay, so say you get done, and then you finally get all of your animation done. You have it rolling or coming to a stop. Then you want to get some frames out of here. You want to get an animation play blast. So to get that play blast, you are going to make sure that this window is selected. You can see the little gray line around it. Select that window. Right mouse click. And we're going to go to Play Blast, and then Option Box. And in the Play Blast option box, you can do it as an MOV or an AVI format. We'll play it back just so you can see it. If you do it as an image file, then you can pull it into After Effects and then export it out as an MOV. So I would probably prefer the MOV. Not MOV, sorry, MP4 format. And so I'll select it as an image, export this out as a PNG. Now, I don't want it from window, I want it from render settings. The scale here is going to be at 1. If you set it at 0.5, it'll be half the size. I want to set it at 1, so it's going to be the full resolution here, and you can see the resolution is 960 540. We can change that if we wanted to, but just leave it for now. Remove temporary files. We want to save this to a file, and we'll tell it where we want to save these images. So we'll save them in there. I'm just going to make another folder just to keep things neat. I'll call it Playblast. Playblast blocking. And we'll go in there, and we use the file name ball bounce underscore 01 underscore blocking underscore MJR. And we'll use PNGs and save. Okay, so now if I hit play blast, or did the wrong one, that's fine. Oh, maybe it didn't. That just looked like it did. So now it will create, it'll pull the images in. This is called fcheck. So if you're at home, you have your home computer, and you want fcheck open or be able to get to it, you can just pin it to the taskbar. So this is going to show you fcheck. So once we have the images, we can close that, and then we can open up After Effects. Okay, we open up After Effects, and then we're going to do a new project, import our file, and then we're going to go to my desktop, go to the ball bounce, go to images, go to Play Blast. So now my ball bounce here, I want to select 01. I want to make sure it says PNG sequence. That means it's going to pull it all in as footage. And at the same time, I can also tell it to create the comp, so I then don't have to pull it in. It'll create the comp at the same time. And then I can do import. So I just need to select the first one. Okay, and then here's my comp. And something looks not quite right. I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna hit the space bar so that we're full screen. I'm also gonna go into my Play Blast and just make sure from render settings. Yeah, I wonder if my render settings are what's crushing it. So if I go up here in this little clapboard with a gear, and then go down to my render settings, and then tell it not to do it from the perspective, but I want to do it from my camera, which is actually named Bright 1. Yeah, I'd want to rename that camera. In this view, if I select the camera by hitting that little camera button, then this Rate 1, I can call this cam. I would have, yeah, oh, I actually changed it, good. So I set it for the cam, hit close, and then I'll just run the Play Blast again. I don't need to do anything. It should just run it. Or It might not because I have this open. Let's just kill this. Delete. Yeah. Import file. Do one PNG sequence comp. It's toying with me. Because now my animation is not working at all. Just gonna flush the cache. This thing has totally been broken. Object matches name. Or if it didn't like that I renamed that camera. Select that camera, delete. I'm going to create a new, just a new cam perspective. Ortho, new, right. I'll change this. Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. Okay. So let's try this one more time. I'm going to lock this, lock the camera. I'm going to rename this camera, call it cam. Now I'm going to go to my render playlist, format image, playlist. Still getting an error. screen buffer for playlist. Render off screen. Let's try it one more time. I wonder if it is because I have this open. Let me just kill this. Don't save. And let's play the last one. I'm gonna just shut it down. File, save scene as. I'm gonna do a ball bounce underscore blocking underscore mj underscore 01 underscore blocking underscore mj. Save, and just shut this thing right down. Okay, now let's open it back up. Go to my desktop. Scenes. I saw it flash up here with an error of some sort. Wrong number of arguments called blue pencil. So my blue pencil might have hosed me here. Panels, orthographic, cam. All right, good. So now that that is set, now let's try opening up After Effects. Okay, new project, right mouse click, import files. Go to my ball bounce, just want to make sure it didn't, oh yeah, I created a different one. So we'll just use this one. Create the composition, opens it all up, and you can see that it's all there. Okay. Then I want to do a file, export to file, save as, oh, sorry, composition. Media encoder. Then you could do something else. You could pull it into DaVinci Resolve, or that's free, that you can get from home if you don't feel like coming into school. So then once I have that, I'm going to go to, I'm going to wait for this to be done. And then H.264 is what I'm looking for. If you can't find it, just click on the down arrow and then just choose H.264. Then we'll tell it where we want to save it, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. Ball bounce. I can save it to my movies. It's fine. Ball bouncing MP4 MJR, and just hit play. While that's doing that, bring this down, and that finished rendering. So we'll pull this to movies. And then that is what you would upload to My Courses and also SyncSketch. Okay. Yeah, I think that is just about it. And I'll upload this rig to My Courses so that you have it if you want to just work on that. If you have any questions, let me know. Isa will be in the lab, and yep, have a good weekend.